So, yeah, what has led me down this path, what I'm going to present, has just been a deep curiosity and fascination with both creation stories, ancient religious creation stories, and ancient scientific creation stories, and just the whole colorful nature of all these different explanatory
Okay.
stories. And in looking through them, finding a lot of commonalities. And what this has developed along with is working on a cosmology based on God, and I'll get to what I mean by God, that has predictive power. It has measurable predictions on what we find as a phenomenon in the universe.
Well,
So,
can you, I'm sure you have a lot of buildup, but I'm really interested in these measurable predictions first. Can you give me an example?
Sure. I got to start first with what I'm calling God, because all of it unfolds from there.
Can you humor me and do the prediction first, and then then circle back to the other stuff?
Sure, absolutely. So one of them would be a constant expansive influence on the universe. Another would be the anatomy and behavior of atoms. And with further detail of the model, to me, it even predicts the structure and order of DNA.
I question your assumption that any of those are predicted in creation myths, but I'm going to go ahead and let you go back to what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So, again, going back to before the beginning, as both scientists and religious love to do, so this is a consideration of an infinite singularity, a unified state that is spatially infinite, okay? Throughout ancient religions, I found it described not necessarily as God, but a pre-existent unified substance often described as water. Like for Greeks, it was chaos. It was an undifferentiated unified substance. It wasn't an arising or falling of forms like we use chaos now. For the Egyptians, it was Nun, this watery substance that was pervaded the universe before the gods arose and all that stuff.
Let me interrupt you. I'd like to know what you're trying to support here. Is it some form of Christianity or some kind of vague general, like deism or something?
Well, specifically, I believe it would be categorized as panentheism, where the divine is with.
Okay, so you're not a Christian.
Yeah. So, not technically, no. I found many dovetails in. Yeah, I found many dovetails with what I've researched out in the Christian mythos, and I've even found that, of course, I'm sure as many of your researchers had in previous incarnations of religion.
But let's say you don't believe that the Bible is literally true. You don't believe that the Quran is literally true. You don't tie anything down to a specific mythology. You just find them useful as a framework. Is that what you're saying?
I find similarities and looking at the Bible in researching it as a collection and kind of an amalgamation of previous similar mythos.
Okay.
And
but you do think of the Bible. You do think of the Bible as a bunch of myths, and not necessarily as there was literally a great flood that filled up the entire world, etc.
Correct. I have an explanation for that, but that's.
Okay.
That takes some explaining, which I'm not going to get into. But anyway, looking at all these myths, especially the Bible, as kind of an example of a telephone game where things get changed over time as they get retold and simplified, and then changed for people's agendas and things like that. But
do you think that does that mean that you think that if we had the unadulterated original first edition Bible and we read what it said that hadn't been corrupted by the telephone game, it would have said stuff that was completely accurate?
No, I think the stories that were handed down that got compiled as the Bible were already a result of the telephone game. Like the Council of Nicaea ended abridged what was considered,
But where do you think the stories originally? Where do you think the stories originally came from? Like the telephone game. In the telephone game, somebody is still the first guy to say something.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what do you think
I think
that is?
Okay, I'll get to that part then. I think what I want to eventually share with you was known by humanity before. I don't think I've discovered anything new as this cosmological logic of how things come to be. That it was known before and got codified.
Known by who?
Stories of gods and ancient man, even civilizations that were prior to this one that we have just the barest remnants of.
So ancient man knew more then than we do now? Is that your point?
Yes, in a way,
Okay.
not in specific, but
what
not like
made you conclude that? When you reviewed the entire history of humanity, what made you come to the decision? And I'm sorry to keep cutting you off, but I'm not sure how long you expect to take to lay out this whole argument, and I'm just interested in your underlying point. How did you decide, looking at the whole history of humanity, that people started out knowing a whole lot of stuff and then gradually forgot things and got dumber and dumber? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for various reasons, for control reasons, and like your other guest said, for installing fear and control in the populace rather than personal knowledge and freedom.
Well, that's not the question. I mean, that is your diagnosis of the situation. But my question is, how did you determine this?
Okay. So
it sounds like a theory like mine is. Maybe.
Right. Well,
is it a theory of yours like mine?
It sounds like a conjecture. I wouldn't call it a theory.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually my in the scientific sense, my theory is geometrically predictive on the phenomenons in the universe. And what I found in that geometry and how these pieces relate to each other, I've been able to find a subjective story that is echoed and has so many similarities and corroborations throughout not only modern religion but ancient religion. It was just started when I discovered this fundamental pattern. It just was staring at me in the face from all these different ways, like looking through a glass darkly. There's a vague shape there, and it is a reoccurring shape.
Do you have an example of a thing that people used to know and have mostly forgotten? Well,
specifically, but
maybe that's not a fair question, because if people have forgotten it, then you wouldn't know what it is. But
well, things like the Library of Alexandria, containing vast amounts of knowledge that just got wiped out and burned down. There was a great loss.
Yeah, but you don't. I mean, you don't know what was in that. I mean, I don't doubt that there are a lot of things that they forgot about. But I'm wondering, like, I'm as a software engineer, I read a whole lot of technical manuals. I have a lot of background on how computers work and how they were invented, and basic trade knowledge. Katilyn, I'm allowed to say what your job is, just not where you work, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You work as
an analyst,
right?
Yep.
For stocks, basically, or an analyst for companies. There are very specific, detailed things that you have to learn. I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
I'm not sure where our caller's going. That was my next question. Where are we headed here?
Yeah.
And the show has a limited amount of time, and so maybe you can understand I'm wary to just sit back and let you develop some very abstract argument that's leading to a point that I'm not clear how you arrived at that point in the first place.
Okay. Well, let me just give you the first prediction of this logic of this working model that I believe I've rediscovered. So again, starting with an undifferentiated substance that's infinite, it has very specific relationships with its own substance. And this is it describes the same motion as the Big Bang, but instead of a finite or infinitesimal singularity, we're dealing with an infinite singularity. So this would be what I would call God. It is omnipresent. It is almighty in that it is absolute pure substance, pure matter. And not to say that it doesn't have a subjective spirit or mind, if you will, but Like with the knowledge of anatomy, I could say with any human up to 99% surety how they are organized, but I can't really say anything about their subjective nature unless they introduce themselves to me. So I'm not going to go on the subjective nature of God. Again, the objective nature of...
I got to be honest with you, Michael. That sounded like a whole bunch of word salad to me. I mean...
Okay. Well, let me just get to this one single point of this model. This infinite singularity has specific relationships with itself, and in quantizing an infinite
that already sounds like more word salad. Something has a bunch of relationships with itself. I mean, when you say that you're going to make scientific predictions about something, I mean, a lot of times the scientific predictions take the form of things like, if you do this specific thing, then based on this information, some measurable effect will occur. You quantify it, and then you are able to repeat that example over and over again. Do you have anything like that? Or do you just have it? So I predict that something will have a whole bunch of relationships with itself.
No, it only has 3 spatial relationships with itself.
Okay.
And when this thing unfolds, it unfolds a metaverse in an equal-sized sphere pack because they're all the same quantized expression or voided expression of the original one thing. Interestingly, a equal-sized sphere pack, each sphere takes up
what the hell is a sphere pack?
What do you do with all of this knowledge? Are you using a formula to predict the answers to your questions from us?
Yeah, and also I want to know, like, have you predicted anything? Have you predicted anything that we didn't already know?
Well,
like has your research led to any particular experiments where you were able to say in advance, nobody has ever done this before, but I predict this is going to be the outcome, and then you did the experiment and it happened the way you predicted? Because that's what a prediction is normally.
Right. Well, this again, it's a geometric model that has specific spatial predictions on the not only the expansive constant of our universe. So let me get to the single point real quick.
What experiments did you do on the expansive constant of our universe?
Let's hear the single point. What do we think the point is? Go ahead, Isaiah.
Okay. Well, what I'm finding geometrically is lining up with things science has already found.
Like what?
It gives a like the expansive constant of the universe, dark energy.
So can you give me a number on one of these constants?
Yes. So this is if your listeners will look this one up, it's called the Kepler conjecture. It was done by a number of mathematicians who calculated. It's also called the cannonball problem. How much space equal-sized spheres take up versus the space in between the spheres.
Well,
and this is in relation to a metaverse.
That sounds like a prediction of math, not science. Do you know the difference?
Okay.
I mean...
Yeah. Okay, then it's a mathematical prediction. And what it predicts is an infinite sphere stack. The expansive constant is the same on every single universe.
Okay, and this was predicted where? In the Bible?
No.
Okay,
no.
Where?
In a geometric mathematical model.
Which came from religion somehow.
No.
No?
I'm not arguing from any textbook or anything. This is
I'm lost.
It's a pure geometric model.
Which you developed?
Yes.
Based on what?
Based on a lot of research, based on geometry, based on mathematical measurements. So again, and this is as opposed to the many worlds metaverse theory that based on this infinite unified substance.
You're losing me, man.
The universe has. Okay. Let me get back to one last point, and then I'll sign off. This infinite singularity is around itself equally in all directions, exists as a field throughout itself, and at the center of itself everywhere. And this creates a void space universe by cavitation. If you want to use the word quantum fluctuation from science, that works too. Anyway, it makes a finite spherical space with a field in between it and the central.
I'm sorry.
Point.
I think I've given you enough of a chance.
Yep. Nobody's following.
Okay, well.
See you later. Okay.
We're all a bunch of triangles, and
All right.
God is water and everything. That's what I got out of that.
I was hoping this would have anything to do with defending religion, but it didn't seem like it. Yeah.